Mask of a Diva, a Stan Kraychik mystery, Book 4, 1994. Author, Grant Michaels. Publisher, St. Martin's Press, New York. Author, Eric Aust. For all the divas, operatic and otherwise. Chapter 37. Some higher force must have driven me to climb that ladder after Rick Jansen, because I am severely acrophobic. But the moment of truth had come, and there was no choice. I just kept reminding myself not to look down or behind me into the vast void of space above the stage floor. Far above me, I saw Rick, who had almost reached the upper tier of the catwalks. The grid itself, where all the pulleys for the flies were attached, the whole huge space was dark and eerie, lit only by a dim glow of work lights. And then a voice reminded me, "Don't look down." I saw Rick make the short leap necessary to get from the ladder onto the metal beams of the grid. He was extremely agile. The columns along the back of Daphne's house would have been no challenge to him. I pressed my good Slavic limbs to climb faster as I approached the top of the ladder. Rick must have felt the vibrations, because he looked down and saw me coming up. His body jolted in surprise. Apparently he hadn't expected anyone to notice or to follow him up there. He scrambled across the grid toward a ladder on the other side of the stage. That one led up to a skylight that opened onto a roof of the opera house. I wasn't about to dance around with him under a summer moon, so I propelled myself from my ladder to the first catwalk and scrambled after him. I thanked my Czech ancestors for passing on the genes for strong legs and springy feet. Rick was already part way up the higher ladder when I got there. I clambered up fast and caught one of his ankles. He tried to shake me off, but I used a trick to hang on to him. Rather than try to limit his motion, I held fast with my hand, but let my arm and shoulder swing loosely, so no matter how hard or wildly he kicked, my arms just followed. "Why were you trying to kill Mathelda?" I said. "Let me go." "What did she do?" "She was blackmailing John." "For what?" He kicked wildly, but then I grabbed his ankle with both my hands. I had to get him down off that ladder with my full weight on his leg. He wasn't going any further, and when we fell, it was only a few feet to the surface of the grid. "Don't look down." Rick tried to shake me off his leg, but my weight was too much for him. Thank God for those 15 extra pounds. Finally, his grip gave out, and we tumbled down onto the grid. I got myself on top of him and pressed him down with my weight. "Who killed those people, you or John?" "Fuck off," he said. "You don't know anything." "Don't talk fresh, Rick." His strong body writhed under my weight. I wasn't going to be able to hold him down indefinitely. Where the hell was Branco? "Why did you do it?" I said. "Fuck off," he said again. I slapped his face. "Save the talk for Daddy John. Does he know what you did?" "Not yet," said Rick. "He may not approve." "He'll love it," said Rick. "John loves anything sick." Case in hand. Rick relaxed his body underneath me. "I'll tell John everything right after opening night," he said. "After all the applause and the elation, when I've got him bound and gagged in our hotel room, that's when he'll finally hear everything I've done for him. Then let's see if he can leave me for someone else, some bodybuilding set designer without balls." "You're pretty buffed yourself," I said. "But I've got the balls to do whatever has to be done." I wish I could have said something tough like that, but instead my inner voice repeated the same old message. "Don't look down." This time, though, it came too late. I found myself looking past Rick's face through the metal I-beams behind his head and down to the stage floor. That was miles away below us. Tiny little creatures were busily moving tiny little things around the stage. My stomach went gurgly and my muscles turned to cotton. Rick must have felt my body go lax, because an instant later he'd flipped me over. "And now," he said with a crazed grin, "prepare to die." "Don't, Rick," I said. "They'll know it's you. They can see us from down there." "But no one ever looks up here." "They will now," I said. "Help!" I screamed. "Help!" Rick slapped my face. "Shut up! I'm in charge now." I was about to scream again, but he put his hand over my head. No one can hear you up here. It's all designed to be soundproof. All your screams are going up, not down. But that's where you'll be going soon, down. So save your breath. You're going to need it for that last long scream. He cackled with glee, and I realized that Rick was the only one who really enjoyed the sicker pleasures like torture and murder. I also realized that facing upwards had decreased my vertigo, and I could think somewhat clearly again. I used the same technique that had worked before when I was pinned under Rick. I relaxed my body, and for a microsecond, without that resistance from me, his own body's pressure caused him to fall toward me, ever so slightly, but also slightly out of his control. I used his body's weight to roll us both over, but this time he got his bearings fast and rolled us again. That's when I felt my legs and part of my butt suddenly without any support, hanging out into nothing over the edge of the grid into the wide margin of air where it didn't quite meet the stage house wall. "How do you like that?" he said, putting his face close to mine. "I can smell the panic coming off your body. And I can smell the tartar on your teeth." He pushed me further over the edge. My whole butt and both legs were dangling free with my lower back. I realized it was Rick's own strength that was keeping me from sliding over the edge at that moment. He knew it too. From my perspective, it wasn't a good place to be. I thrashed wildly for a hold on something, but all I got was air. One shoulder went over the edge. The other was slipping fast. "Where's the safety screen?" said Rick. "Oh, that's right. Your friend Daphne paid off the building inspector to get the theater open on time without it. Too bad for you. She was such a naughty old girl." "Don't, Rick." "Bye-bye, faggot." And he let me go. But my fall was as brief as the half-life of platinum atom. In my random flailing, I'd somehow grabbed hold of the wide flange at the bottom of the I-beams of the grid. Rick stood up and saw what had happened. "Shit," he said. "You still here?" He stuck out of his feet over the edge of the grid and tried to kick at my hands. Not the hands, I thought. I moved. He moved. We both moved again. I called upon the spirit of Fay Ray to bless me with an ear-splitting scream. Then I let loose with it. Quiet seconds followed, and I almost thought I had woken from a bad dream. Then I heard Rick say, "That was good. You really don't want to die." He seemed to be stimulated by my adrenaline. It was fight or flight, I told myself, and since there was no way to fight, I took the alternative. I saw a nearby cable and I made a wild grab for it. I caught it. At least my hands were safe for the moment, but my weight was causing the cable to swing and jounce wildly. I lowered myself carefully, the 10 or so feet, to the batten pipe at the end of the cable. From there, I looked across the broad expanse of the fly space and saw that I had set into motion a huge flat of scenery as wide as the entire stage. A few other cables were connected to that same pipe across in length. It took only a moment for the flat to settle into a slow, pendulous swing, the kind of motion you'd expect on a veranda on a lazy summer's night in the deep south. Then I found myself looking down 100 feet below. I saw the scene change methodically, continuing on stage. Rick had been right. For all the noise and drama up there on the grid, not one member of the stage crew had looked up. Then I found my hands gripping the cable in terror, for my fear of heights had been reawakened. Meanwhile, Rick was watching me, trying to figure out the next best way to kill me. But he was going to have to catch me first, and I still had enough nerve and strength to increase the swing of the batten and the wall of scenery, and then to play it, changing the direction of its swing. Anything to make it more difficult for Rick to grab the cable. Leave it to me to try and save myself with a trick I learned on a playground swing. Rick reached out for the cable, but kept missing it. "Come, little fishy," he said. "Come to Papa." I guess he was appealing to my inner child. Good thing I'd aborted that little monster long ago. "I'm not a fish," I muttered. Rick kept trying to grab the cable I was on, stretching himself further and further out over the grid. "I'll get you, you bastard." Then I watched him confidently calculating the period of the swing of my cable, the way a cat watches a string and can predict its path. And I knew when the moment was right, he would reach out and make a risky lunge for it, and that's exactly when I jolted myself mid-swing to change the path of the cable's arc. Rick reached too far and missed my cable. He lost his balance, fluttered for a moment, and then reached out and grabbed desperately at another cable. He caught it, and he was saved. We faced each other, me swinging like little Sally Saucer, and him analyzing the situation like a wily predator. That's when I noticed another big difference between us. Where my cable connected to a baton pipe and a big piece of scenery, Rick's cable connected to a baton from which hung a flimsy, gauzy scrim. Far below us, the work lights on stage suddenly went out. Then came the sounds of the orchestra playing the tremendous opening chords to the dark scene in the New Age workshop. These sounds meant only one thing. I watched Rick's eyes bulge in terror as he felt the snap of the computer-controlled release latch travel through the cable he was holding. On the other end of that cable was a counterbalance, but it was negligible against Rick's body weight on the cable. He went down, down, down toward the stage, along with the scrim. I heard the cables whirring through the pulleys above me, and I was helpless to stop them. Rick screamed a long, tortured wail all the way down, and then a miracle happened. The cable stopped. My logical self quickly surmised what had happened. The bottom of the scrim had reached the stage floor, and at that moment the cables had locked again. I looked down and saw that the sudden stop had thrown Rick off the scrim, and he had fallen to the stage floor. The dramatic music continued. I heard the sound of electrical motors and saw a tremendous wall of fabric rise up before me, and I realized the main curtain had come up. Down below, the stage lights had set the spiritual mood of Ulrika's New Age healing studio, and from my desperate perch on a cable high up in the flies, I heard Rick scream out at the audience, "What are y'all staring at, assholes?" He tried to get up and run, but couldn't. He'd hurt his leg badly when he fell off the scrim. In that moment, Rhonda Luca had assessed the situation and given the order to bring down the main curtain. So once more, I got to watch the giant mechanics at work up in stage heaven. Work lights flashed brightly to life everywhere around me, and I saw many people running to center stage. Among them, I tried to recognize Lieutenant Branco, whose broad shoulders and dark curly hair would make him easy to identify. I called out over and over again, but no one heard me. I guess the sound really did go up. It was only after they got Rick Jansen off the stage that some of the crew looked up into the flies and saw me hanging there. After that, my rescue was easy. Rhonda very cautiously lowered the piece of scenery I was connected to, which turned out to be the back wall of Mimi's finale for the festival's production of La Baham. Then the crew brought out a big ladder and got me down. The scrim that Rick Jensen had fallen from was the same one that had killed Adam Pierce. Both the maestro and John Byers insisted that the show continue, but the police forbade it. The dress rehearsal was canceled. Abel Kilkus never sung a note that night, and I found Daphne in the patrons' lounge in tears. Some opera. Gay Mysteries audiobooks. I think it is easy to hate a label, but a face humanizes the word. So this effort is twofold: to offer comfort to those like myself that your world didn't end because you don't fit into the view of acceptable society on both sides, and in hopes of helping those with family that are LGBTQ, that it doesn't mean we are aliens from the child they once knew. Reassure them so they can maybe be supportive at the same time, being true to their values.